teacher, so I pontificate plenty, and I think I'd rather mostly let the poems speak for themselves. But I will say that there's a couple things that come to mind reading poetry right here. One is the thing that I'm most proud of the Bay Area for is its integration of civilization and nature, and this is perfect example of it, reading poetry here in the woods by the creek. The other thing I would say is that when I was in college here, back in the 70s, I was really frustrated all the time with the institution. You can imagine, dehumanizing and all that. And I would come to the creek. Now I was upset about things greater than that, but I blamed it all on the institution. And I came down by the creek, and I would settle into the calm of the natural world, and it was just incredibly healing. So that's kind of an overview. This poem that I'm going to start with, I wrote about 25 years ago, but I wrote it just up the creek here a little bit. And I guess it's about mortality, it's about people who mattered to me, it's about insects that fly around in the shade when it's really hot and don't get out of it. In the shade, stone walls guide our creek through this campus to a wooden bridge where redwoods shade me as I gaze upstream and see on a distant bank, bathed in sunlight, the people who've counted on their haunches, watching the water pass, a communion that lifts us out of our flawed selves like insects darting playfully, penned in by the shade, one brief dance before the turning earth scatters us. I look forward to meeting friends and mentors again in the wisdom of afterwards, after we pass through this rocky channel to the clouds. I'm going to read a poem from this book, which is the book that I published some years ago, but it's come out in a new edition, especially for Watershed. And I'm going to read a poem about John Muir. I teach in Martinez. This guy right here used to, that's past tense, but all the time is now. This is called The Death of John Muir, 1914, and he did die in December 1914, right before the big fighting started. He was a Scotsman. It's set in Yosemite, although that's not where he died, but you know, that's where his spirit no doubt lives. The Death of John Muir, 1914. It's a bit ironic. I hope you like irony. Tonight, a longer dusk, the sun pauses to let you slip into the rich leather of the sugar pine, pulse there quietly, forever. Tomorrow in Europe, they will begin the massacres, young Scots marching with the others toward their inefficient grave. A mile from the canyon walls, alone with a wood rat, it is easy to condemn the insanity of herds, easy to believe that in primitive we can avoid the ominous pistons, the oil, the dead piling upon the dead. But in 1929, they will lay a road up from the Central Valley, and Fender will piggyback scarred Fender. They will be coming to appreciate you. Thomas Jefferson, early transcendental thinker, although the word hadn't been coined yet, bought the Louisiana Purchase so that the United States could be a nation of agrarian farmers, because he believed, probably rightly, that people close to nature would be morally superior. Hasn't happened that way. I like to write about nature, of course, but I also talk about the nature within, and I guess that's finally what this poem is about. It's called Venerate the Plow, as in a plow. A woodcut from Jefferson's time promotes the moral edification that comes from farming. It shows a man harnessed behind a team of oxen and gripping that long, hard extension of himself. Behind him stands a woman, delighted, cradling a sheaf from some past harvest and wearing a halo of stars. Jefferson had great faith in this occupation. 200 years later, American men still do as they struggle to feel their God inside. If Jefferson were alive, he'd have trouble finding the earth, buried as it is under so many vain operations. But the fields are still here, in every face we meet, in every exhausted body still connected to the firmament. Okay, this is about a river in North Carolina called the Eno. It's called Running Up the Eno. It's after William Carlos Williams. It's spring, and the new leaves are incandescent as light fills the forest that will darken soon. This river is muddy, quiet, catches the pollen and sets it eastward. I have been running west, but pause to listen to the birds, the traffic, distant and ominous. The peace in this park depends upon something inside of us turning away from the grail to the holy that is present always. Pray for the rabbis in Eastern Europe who stayed, for the unsnapped pictures of Indian life, for the inward journey, this river whose serenity is enough. I'm going to read a poem that's a little more surreal. It's called Noah. And I'm going to read it because my son Skylar is standing right there. His name's not Noah, it's Skylar. This is about the first Noah. The moon on the unusually warm night buttered the walk I took with my son as we followed the railroad tracks, then paused under a radiant hanging garden, for there was a lot to process and even more to protect as those dreams from the last few generations drove holy boats across the land and into the watery horizon. But we still shared our animal and the viscera of caves and the rain of moonlight from he who came earlier to harvest tails wagging and eyes aglow. This poem is called Tonic Minor. Among other things, it's about cycling, which is, perhaps going to be the savior of mankind, bicycling. But more than that, it's about, it's about nature as the oversoul, as Emerson talked about it, a reflection of our inner divinity, as our inner divinity is a reflection of the outer divinity, and that symbiotic relationship between nature and man is a beautiful thing. So the language tries to draw from language that venerates nature, as well as language that speaks of the glories of urban life. And there is no greater glory of urban life than jazz. So you may recognize Charlie Parker, you may recognize Miles Davis. Tonic Minor. Cycling the North Coast, I think of the birth of cool as a blue jay follows me, darting and dipping like miles. This sound is not ours alone. The trumpet in the darkened club, dense with grief, with revelation, rises out of the blood of all Earth's creatures, out of the light that sinks into every frantic eye. I know this bird is not sorrow. I know this bird is not grief. But the dark clouds suckling the hills are almost the breast that fills the baby, nearly the waves that slow the backbeat to make the human swoon. I am riding north to escape this body, to encourage wind in its persistent desire to change us. I am riding bird, and I am alone, like the giant on stage whose eyes glaze to increase the miles, who welcomes shocks from the road, a sudden lightning, because birds can sense when the earth is about to give. The cymbals will hush when the sister mysteries will blow out the final note we love.
Eliot? Yeah, we're going to need to
Can I read one more here then?
Okay, sure. That's great.
The Wilds. This is also about bicycling. We used to ride bikes back up the canyon road to the Neutra house. Neutra built a lot of low houses, lots of glass, very boxy, very modern. Los Angeles. We used to ride bikes back up the canyon road to the Neutra house on the edge of Coyote Land, where my friend lived with an Israeli mom and Midwestern dad. And then we'd pedal wisely on, puffing and laughing at the way our lungs took us to the edge of extinction. Puffing and laughing at the way our lungs took us to the edge of extinction before we'd return to collapse in his driveway and glide our arms and soiled hands toward the clear glass panels that shielded a bucolic atrium and scarlet door from the mystery winds, as if on the portico of paradise, but we wouldn't die. And when the old quiet breath came back and his sad home lit up with wild 45s and clever appliances, relegating us to the thrill of being still 13 and bored quickly by everything, we prayed night would become the soul howl of animals, and the dark sky would consume our beauty, then forge that wilder body before earth would choose to rest. Thanks a lot.
Hey, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Look forward to the rest of it.
So, Jim, could you tell us